Hello guys, it's Fireside Chess here, and I'm coming back to you guys with another YouTube video. And in today's video, I'm going to be going over the 5 worst defenses for black. And this is a continuation to my first video, which was the 5 worst openings for white, and I'll make sure I'll put the link in the description for you guys to watch that once you're finished with this video. And without any further ado, let's get started. So our first defense that we have is the Barnes defense, or the Fred's defense. It depends on which one your opponent will play, but both will be very similar. So the Fred's defense would go e5 and f5, or if it's the Barnes defense, it would be f6. And for those of you who watched my first video, this would be very similar to the Barnes opening, which would, for white, just be f3. So these problems will be a very recurring theme with a lot of our openings, but they are extremely important. So our first problem is that it's not opening up any lines of development for our bishops because they're still being blocked by b7, d7, g7, and e7. And this also isn't taking much control of the center, even though it is taking control of e5. And again, the center squares would be e5, d5, d4, and e4. This can be easily stopped with e takes f5. We're already up a pawn, and black has no center control. And that would wrap it up for the Barnes/Fred's defense. And the next defense that we have here is the Cornstalk defense, which is just as silly as it sounds. It's a5 in response to e4. The problems that we have here, again, it's not opening up any lines of development for either of our bishops or even the queen. And it's not challenging the center whatsoever. It's not even challenging e4. And that just allows white to bring the double pawns to the center, which is taking up these 4 squares, which could become a problem for black later on. And the next defense we have is the Gundram defense. This defense goes e4, e5, knight to f3, queen to e7, which is our first problem. I'll touch on that later. Knight to c3, and c6. Now this isn't a very good opening because we're not helping any of our pieces develop. Again, with their bishops, we were sort of assisting our dark square bishop's development with e5, but we almost immediately block it up with queen to e7. And it's even hurting our knight's development because normally the knights are indifferent to most pawn moves. But moving c6, that's taking up a very powerful square for our knight. And our other problem for this opening is that we're moving the queen early. Moving the queen early in the opening is almost never a good idea. You should only be doing that if you have checkmate or you can win a huge material advantage or a positional advantage. And the reason why moving our queen early in the opening is not a good idea is because the queen can easily get pushed around and beat up by pawns, knights, and bishops, or even rooks, which we have lots of. And even if white and black play this opening perfectly, it will lead to some awkward development for black, an inferior position, and black will be a few tempi behind. And a tempi is basically plural for tempo, which is basically being like a couple moves or 1 move behind. And the fourth opening that we have is the Polish defense, which is b5 in response to d4. So we have that there. Some people say that the Polish opening is pretty good because it counters the queen's gambit, which is d4, c4. But even with proper play from both sides again, it'll lead to black having some awkward development. And this again isn't really helping black's development at all. It is opening up that little diagonal for the light square bishop, which allows it to take control of the long diagonal, but that really won't be helping black anytime soon. And our final opening is the Damiano defense. It's a very hard name to pronounce. And the Damiano defense is e4, e5, knight to f3, and then f6. And one problem here is that white can sacrifice on e5, meaning knight takes e5, and black would be forced to take, and then white plays queen to h5, which would definitely win the pawn, but black does have to play g6, and after white plays queen to e5 check, black then loses his rook, because black would have to come here, and we can take the rook away. And even after all of that, again, black is losing a lot of material with the pawn and the rook. And black did move the king closer to the center, which is never really a good idea in any scenarios, especially in the opening, because that is bringing black closer to white's side, which makes it way easier for white to checkmate. And that's going to wrap up today's video of black's 5 worst defenses. And just a reminder, if you find yourself playing any of these defenses, please make sure you switch. It'll only help you, and it'll make sure that you come out of the opening either with an advantage or at least being even. And thumbs if you liked it, subs if you loved it. Goodbye, and stay safe.